Welcome to The World Over Live. My guest tonight is truly a legend in the music industry. He's one of the most successful American rock and roll performers in the pre-British invasion era. He had a dozen top 40 hits in the late 50s and early 60s. Who could forget Teenager in Love, The Wanderer, and Runaround Sue? Throughout his career, though it was booming, his personal life was another matter. I sat down with him recently in New York to discuss his new memoir, Dion, The Wanderer Talks Truth. In it, he discusses the highs and lows of his career, the death of his friends Ritchie Valens and Buddy Holly, and the rediscovery of his Catholic faith, which kept him from losing everything. Take a look. Looking at this guitar, I'm thinking of Hank Williams, Sr., not Jr. And I know he was an inspiration of yours.
Absolutely.
When did you first hear him, and what influence do you think he had on your approach to music?
Well, you want to know, my parents, my father had wonderful, wonderful qualities, but he didn't like to work. He would dive off the City Island Bridge, that was attached to the Bronx, or he would be sculpting or painting.
Making puppets?
But he never had a real job. Yeah, he would sculpt and stuff. But my mom and dad she was a real, had an exaggerated sense of her own responsibility, thank God, because she worked hard. So they always argued about the rent. So the more they argued, the better off. I found that, I found the guitar when I was like 10. Yeah. And the more they'd argue, the better I'd get on guitar. I'd close the door, I'd get in the room, and I'd tune into those. There was a station out of Newark called the Don Larkin Show, and I heard Hank Williams. And I'd learn about life. He would sing songs like, in the world's mighty gallery of pictures, hang the scenes that are painted from life. They hang scenes of love and of passion, pictures of peace and of strife. They hang pictures of youth and of beauty, I'm trying to remember, of old age and the blushing young bride. They all hang on the wall, but the saddest of all are the pictures from life's other side. Oh, the pictures from life. And then he'd go off and paint pictures of people who were going through problems and distress and all kinds of stuff, suicidal thoughts. So I learned I learned about life listening to Hank Williams, and it was him and Jimmy Reed were my. Jimmy Reed was the
groove.
You got me running down, you got me hiding, you got me run hide, running out where you wanna let it roll. Yeah, yeah. You got me doing what you want me, baby, what you want, yeah, roll. Jimmy Reed. So that's both those guys, Hank Williams and Jimmy Reed. In fact, Raymond, if you took country music in the 50s and you took blues,
right,
and you fused them, you had what we called rock and roll.
Right.
And that was my foundation. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Jimmy Reed and Hank Williams, doing what I'm doing.
And you hear it throughout your career, but in your contemporary work as well. I mean, the directness, the heartfelt simplicity and power, because it's of real life, that Hank Williams wove into the music. You hear that in your songs.
Yeah, they didn't sound like they went for voice lessons.
No. It wasn't top hat stuff. It wasn't the Stork Club. It was, life.
Yeah.
Life in all its complexities, and you capture it even today.
I call it from the streets, but they would call it from, the front porch or the...
But it's a weird, Dion, it's a weird marriage in that these guys came from the sticks. You were born in the Bronx.
Well, I would say the blues, the way I define it, Raymond, is the naked cry of the human heart longing to be in union with God. And you don't have to be black and from Mississippi in the 30s to have the blues. I'm sure John Paul had the blues the way he grew up with communism and, you know, with
Losing
I don't
his
know, he had
father and mother,
the Nazis coming, you know, and all that kind of stuff coming, you know, and that he grew up with, and he had the blues. And if you had, and David, if you look at you know, the Psalms in the Bible, and if you had to retitle the Psalms, you would retitle them the blues, because it's all about people that are broken and damaged, but they're longing, you know, they're crying out to God, and those are songs, the Psalms,
Right.
and they comfort you on the journey home, so to speak.
Tell me about that journey. I want to skip forward, and then I'm going to go back to the beginning of you, Dion, and the Belmonts. But let me move forward to 1959, because there is that moment where you're on the bus with the Big Bopper and Ritchie Valens and Buddy Holly, and the bus keeps breaking down. It's freezing cold in the Midwest. They decide to charter a plane to Fargo. You don't get on that plane. You're the only one who didn't. Why didn't you get on? And tell us your problem with the way this has been reported all these years.
Well, simply, they've made movies and wrote books and blogs and plays and so many, you know, over the years. And if as many people who said they flipped a coin with Buddy Holly, if that was all true, they'd need a 747. But I was in the room. See, Buddy Holly chartered the plane. He was an extraordinary guy, Raymond. He was 22 years old, and he, on one hand, he was like an old soul, a fearless businessman. He was taking flying lessons out at Teterboro Airport in New Jersey. He was opening up a record company called Taupe. He was starting a publishing company. He moved from Lubbock, Texas to New York. He was married. Maria Elena was pregnant. And he was an extraordinary guy, off stage, very decisive, formal, structured, just elegant. He'd get on stage, hit the chord, and he'd be, well, baby, baby, now the little things, and you'd hold on to your butt. We're going on a trip, you know. And he was a free abandoned rocker on stage. So I learned a lot from him. I was 19, and make a long story short, the tour was, it was so cold out there in the Midwest with this little yellow church school bus we were on, that Buddy decided to charter a plane for the headliners, because we were the ones making the money. You got to understand, back then maybe a policeman or a fireman was making $80 to $100. We were making like $800 a week. So when he chartered the plane, there was only 4 seats on it. It was a Beechcraft Bonanza plane. It had 4. The pilot, Buddy, there were 2 seats. We were in the room. He said, you know, let's flip a coin, call it, you know. And
But you won.
the Bopper and I, the Big Bopper and I won the coin toss. But when he told me that it was going to cost $36 for a 2-hour flight from Clear Lake, Iowa to Fargo, North Dakota, I said, Richie, you go. It was what my parents were arguing about every day of my life, you know. The rent was $36, and that's like maybe today $400 or $500. I'm not sure, but it was a lot of money. My head hadn't stretched out to that amount of money yet, to spending something like that. So I told Richie, you go, and he took my seat, and I was the only one that survived past February 3rd. You know, the next morning we found out that the plane had crashed, and
What was the takeaway for you? The message there?
For me, those guys affected my life on a lot of levels. You know, who am I? Where am I? Why am I here? Where am I going? What's this all about? And I started asking God some questions, or reaching out for, like, God. I didn't know God from a hole in the wall, but I got some answers. And here I am 52 years later with, I think, some answers. And that's the reason why I wrote this new book. It's about coming home.
Yeah.
Even everybody's a wanderer. We're all looking for home, to be safe, secure, home, respected, loved. And and knowing who we are or whose we are, and even if we don't know the questions, that's what we're looking for.
And this is, what an amazing journey this has been for you. And I want to walk people through it. I want you to relive some of this for us and share it with us. How did Dion and the Belmonts start? This was a group of kids you sang on the corner with, yes?
Yeah, well, I recruited the best doo-wop singers in my neighborhood. One guy was an opera singer, Angelo DeLeo. One guy, Freddie Milano, knew a lot about harmonies, just intuitively. He was gifted with handing out parts. And Carlo Mastrangelo was a jazz drummer who could scat and sing like nobody's business. We'd go down to the Apollo Theater, and by the time we left and got back to the Bronx, we were like, we thought we were horns. So we started making up songs, you know, and I started giving out parts to these guys, you know, and our first song sounded like a group of horns, you know.
Oh, beautiful. I Wonder Why the first?
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
I mean, it defines that era, though. You
Well,
mustn't have been, of course, you couldn't have been aware of it. You were just taking in the streets and the vibe and the sounds around you and but it did define that whole era.
It's an amazing thing that we did it on, like you say, on instinct. It wasn't like we were conscious of, you know, but here we were in a room, 4 guys, 17, 16, 18, and Carlos starts with dun 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 dun, and I'm like, and we start singing. I'm singing lyrics. Angelo's in the clouds with this tenor part, and Freddie's in the middle filling in the gaps, and Carlo's like, puedo, bat, 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 bat. It was like 4 guys doing 4 separate things, and it was unbelievable. I was 16 years old. I was like, it was, I would say, like a taste of heaven for me. You know?
Yeah, it's inspired. No, it's inspired. You hear it today, and it still has that. Where is this coming from? You watch the video of you guys on television. You know, it just comes out.
Yeah.
It's obviously not staged, over-rehearsed, choreographed. It's just, it's so natural.
It was made up on the 6th Avenue D train coming downtown.
And what a string of hits. I mean, then you go off on your own. You do The Wanderer. You do Run Around Sue. You have this string of hits. Were you happy?
Part of me was very, you know, one thing my father always gave me was this enthusiasm for life, the wonder, the awe, the mystery of life. You know, he was a character, but he kind of instilled that or encouraged it in me. And getting a hit record is almost, or being popular or famous or successful, it's almost like a narcotic. It is like a narcotic, you know. So I don't know how truly happy I was like excited about a lot of things, but deep inside, you get down in the core. When I was alone, I'd wonder, you know, there's something missing. Something's missing. Yeah, the bank book's full. I got the new car, but who are the people in the car, and how do you relate to them, and where we going, and, you know, we're making good time, but we don't know where we're going.
That's a bit of a problem. You said at one point, I don't know, I think it was in an interview I read, you said, success is a funny thing. You can gain it and think you own it, but really, it owns you. Explain that to me.
Well, if you don't know who you are, or you know, if you're not, really don't have a good sense of, like I say, whose you are, and what you're doing here, and you know, your vision, it could own you, and it destroys a lot of people. You could see it.
You marry your childhood sweetheart, Susan. It would seem that your life would be then on an upward trajectory. At that time, you're doing pretty heavy drugs. You'd been doing heroin. You did heroin at 14, I think.
Yeah.
Where were you spiritually during that moment? This is in the mid-'60s, getting into the '60s.
Spiritually, I was very, very, to be honest with you, very selfish, self-centered. Now that I look back on it,
Sure.
Inconsiderate, fearful, dishonest. Who knew? I thought I was God's gift to the world. You know,
Don't we all?
I was fighting. I was all wrapped, but you know, deep inside, I would say it was the bleakest, darkest emotional period of my life. The mid-'60s. You know, they often say, if you remember the '60s, you really weren't there.
Do you remember the '60s? In and out, vaguely?
It was crazy for me. There was a lot of, not honest searching, you know, just trying to fill up the emptiness with the drugs and the parties and running. I was running. And it doesn't matter what kind of shoes you got on if you're running. I don't care if you're using alcohol, drugs, pills, you know, sex, drugs, rock and roll, whatever you're doing, you're running, and there's it doesn't come out well.
In 1967, you are doing drugs, and you relate in the book that you literally saw the devil. Tell us about that.
Well, you know, an illusion, or who knows? You know, I don't know, but I was so saturated with drugs on a daily basis that I was under a stairwell with a pusher, and we were doing a deal, and he like literally turned into the devil. You know, the kind of stereotype, you know, the horns.
Horns and the whole 9 yards.
Scared me. I knew I wasn't in a good place. You know, maybe it was just a sign from God, just saying, you know,
wake up.
Yeah.
Then you and Susan moved down to Miami to change your lives, get a fresh start, shake off the city, and you encounter your in-laws, Jack, your father-in-law particularly, whom you weren't terribly fond of initially. Tell me what happened there. What did you think of him, first of all?
Well, I was never not fond of Jack.
But he
I was more frightened of him.
Oh, okay.
Well, I was frightened.
In the book, it sounds like you thought he was kind of a square guy.
No, I was frightened of him because he had eggs for breakfast and had a little prayer book and had these light blue eyes that kind of sparkled, and he would talk about, do you hear the birds singing? And my head was, I'd wake up with a hangover like, oh, I'll go, what birds? What is he talking about? I didn't hear any birds. But, you know, Jack had found he found himself and found God and was trying to reach out to me in the most loving way. He never said, be like me, do as me, think as me, you know. But he would share his experience, strength, and hope with me, you know, across the kitchen table.
Yeah.
But I was frightened of it. I didn't, you know, I could say that now.
Right.
At the time, I couldn't define fright because, you know.
And you, but he was instrumental in your getting off of drugs. Tell me about that moment. What happened there?
Well, you know, he said, at one point in our conversation, I must have been vulnerable, but he started talking about his fears and his struggle. And he said, you know, if you find the God of your understanding, this was his words, he said, God will solve your problem. You can't solve it. It's almost, he said, Dion, it's like we're broken. Our mind is broken. You can't heal or solve anything with a broken mind. You have to reach out. If you find him, he will solve the problem. So, what do you think I did? I saw him on his knees one night, and I didn't know what he was doing. It was a profound sight, you know, to see this giant of a man. He was like John Wayne. He had like 40 guys working for him. You know, I thought, what's he doing on his knees, you know? I tried it. I've never been the same.
That was it?
43 years ago, never been the same. Wow. I got off my knees, and God must have touched me. I know it sounds, I don't know what it sounds like. These days.
Was it instantaneous? I mean, was it?
Listen,
that was the last time you touched drugs?
Last time. I haven't had a drug or a drink for 43 years.
Nothing?
Nothing.
Wow. You wrote a book. You wrote a book. You wrote a song to kind of commemorate that moment.
I did?
Yes, you did. Your Own Backyard is kind of about this, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. How'd that go? That's so long ago. I've been sitting here thinking about when I started in drinking. I went on to dope, but surely to change my life. I lost everything near and dear to me. Everything, I wanted to be, me, my children, and my wife. It was like it's like you think you're gaining something, but it'll rob you from everything. And Jack used to tell me, he said, because he had a problem with drinking at one time, he said, if you walk into a bar room and you throw some money up on the bar, he said, I don't look at it like I'm throwing money up on the bar. I look at it like I'm throwing my sanity. Well, I'm talking about alcoholics. I'm not talking about having a drink.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I'm not. My wife has a glass of wine every time we go out for dinner. And has all she wants and leaves the rest. I don't know what that's about. But he said, I think of that money up on the bus. My house, my wife, my kids, my sanity, my job, my health. I might as well put it all up there because for me, it doesn't work.
Uh-huh. And now you have a major conversion is what really happens as a result of this time period, right?
I did.
Because you were raised Roman Catholic, Lady of Mount Carmel Church in the Bronx.
I knew nothing about the religion. I knew nothing about being Catholic.
Sounds like the Mother Angelica background. She knew nothing, her family.
I heard
twice
Father,
a year.
Son, and Holy Spirit. That I heard, or I used to cross myself when I passed the church.
And that was it.
But Bishop Peternicone, who was the Monsignor, he, at the time, used to call me over and challenge me with a lot of kind of strange, different vision that I got from the streets. Like Rebel Without a Cause was out with James Dean. He'd say, why rebel without a... Dion, come over here. Why rebel without a cause? Rebel for the truth, then you really got something. Then I'd pass by the church again. He'd say, Dion, what makes a man happy? And I'd say, Monsignor, if I could get a date with that girl Susan who moved down from Vermont, what a righteous fox. Monsignor. If I could get a new Gibson guitar, Monsignor, if I could get a hit record, if I could get a Thunderbird, he'd say, no, Dion, the virtuous man is a happy man, St. Thomas Aquinas. Thanks, Monsignor, I was trying, I'll see you later. And I'd walk away and I'd say to myself, what's virtue? I didn't even know what it was. And I'd go back and ask. And for another 20 minutes, I'd get a teaching on virtue. It's a habitual and firm disposition to do the good. And he would get into it. And I still remember it. And so after all these drug-induced years and searching, when I was at my bottom, what do you think I thought of?
Monsignor and his
Monsignor
virtue.
And Mount Carmel Catholic Church. And I wonder where God is in all this. I'd hear Jack, so I said a prayer. And I was... it was almost, I have this feeling, Raymond. The scriptures say, ask and you'll receive. So I get this feeling like a lot of people are going to end up at the end of their life at, in front of the Lord. They're going to be going, how come this? How come that? Why? When did you, and he's going to say, well, why didn't you ask? And I never thought of asking. Asking is a prayer. And it never occurred to me. But I asked. And I received, and here I am.
Well, first you kind of went into the evangelical church. You were non-denominational, right?
Right.
And it started a whole new period. I mean, you went from The Wanderer, which I am going to ask you to do a little bit of because it so captures. Do you see that as kind of capturing your kind of tough guy, street approach to life early on? Or is that a misnomer to try to assign that song to you? Personally.
Well, first of all, let me explain the song. I roam from town to town. I go through life without a care. I'm as happy as a clown. with my 2 fists of iron, but I'm going nowhere. So the song turns back on itself, and it's really saying, you know, yeah, I'm this and I'm that.
Happy as a clown, not a happy
Yeah,
character.
No, it's a song that's showing that, you know, it's has a little awareness to it, where the guy just sees for a second, he goes, I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah, there's a
This
little
is
truth,
not getting,
bitter truth
yeah,
in it.
right,
Yeah.
right. It turns in on itself. And people like Bruce Springsteen saw that. He was the first guy who came up to me. He says, I get that song. Because a lot of people think it's about a lot of fun, you know, and I understand that, you know.
Yeah.
I'm the type of guy that likes to roam around. I'm never in one place. I roam from town to town, find myself falling for some girl. I hop in that car, mine, drive around the world. I'm a wanderer. I get around, round, whatever, you know. But it was written about a guy named Jackie Burns in my neighborhood who had tattoos all over him. Flo on my left arm,
Right.
Mary on my right. Janie is the girl I'll be with tonight. When she asks me which one I love the best, I tear open my shirt and I show Rosie on my chest. You know, this guy was a character. And a lot of the songs I put together back then were like about street characters that were bigger than life. So I get that. You know, there were guys in my neighborhood that were bigger than life. They deserved a song.
They earned the right to a song.
Yes, they did. They earned.
Let's talk for a second about you have this conversion, and your music starts changing as well. You go into this, I call it your gospel phase. In the 80s, it was the late 70s though, really, wasn't it? Yeah, it's the late 70s into the 80s, and then there's a whole stretch of gospel albums there.
Yeah, I got very inspired by, you know, I was reading scripture for the first time in my life, and I'd be laughing, and I'd be crying, I'd get inspired, and the songs would come out, you know. And one album was up for a Grammy. It was called I Put Away My Idols. I had gone to Israel, and I'm reading Isaiah, and it says, I put away my idols. I said, well, isn't that something? You know, I had so many idols, you know, I had so many things I had before God, you know. And you have to watch out for that, because otherwise God gets eased out of the equation, and people get lost. They get lost in very sophisticated ways, especially these days, you know.
December 14th, 1979, you talk about an event that happened to you. You're out jogging. What happened?
Well, I believed in God, and I was sober as a judge. You know, I was working a spiritual-based program that was actually gleaned from the disciplines of St. Ignatius of Loyola. It's a 12-step spiritual-based program, but you know, I was looking for that spiritual awakening, and I was jogging one day, and I said, God, it would be nice to be closer to you. And I had an experience. It must have been like the Apostle Paul's. It was very sudden. It was brilliant. It was profound, and I don't even know if I could explain it, but a white light went off in the pit of my chest to come out of every pore of my being. It was like, and I saw Christ standing in front of me, and I ran right into his body, his arms, you know, and I've never been the same. I've never been the same since that day. That was about 33 years ago.
Fell to your knees on the jogging path?
No, I didn't. I kept running. I
you
couldn't
kept
wait
running.
to tell somebody.
Oh.
No, the revelation kept coming to me as I was jogging. And I ran into his body, and yet I heard a thud behind me. I thought something fell. And I looked back, there was nothing there, but I kept running, and this revelation started coming to me. I understood. Like I said, I never was taught theology or anything like that, but I understood why God stepped into history, why he came, why he did. All of a sudden, the cross that I heard about as a kid made sense. I said, I got it. I understand. You know, I understood something that I never understood before.
Now,
I understood forgiveness, that it goes deeper than any sin you could commit. And one thing I wanted to say about that day, I was telling somebody the other day, I never, ever since that happened to me, I've never, ever had to doubt my self-worth ever again. I knew how valuable I was.
And with all the success, with all the fame and notoriety, you doubted yourself?
That didn't, it doesn't get you where this experience got you. You know, this changed something in the center of my being, that when I'm going through rough times today or have days in my life where I'm challenged, that foundation does not change for me. I never have to move from it. I understand I'm taken care of today, tomorrow, and in the hereafter.
So you're in these evangelical churches, and you're beginning to hear things around the edges critical of the faith of your childhood, the faith you were baptized to, the Catholic Church.
True.
Tell me about that journey back to the Catholic faith.
Well, first of all, let me tell you something. The Protestant churches I was in, thank God for that whole experience. I was in churches for 18 years that I could get around this. When I sit in Mass today and they have the 3 readings, I know where they fall in the story.
Right.
I could drop them into Isaiah and Deuteronomy, the letters, the Gospels. I know where they fit in the story, thanks to Protestant churches. You understand? But somewhere along the line, I started reading verses that I never heard from the pulpit, like the foundation, the pillar and foundation of truth is what? If you ask pretty much any Protestant pastor, what is the pillar and foundation of truth? They'll all say the Bible or the Word of God or Christ. That's the rock. But the Bible itself says it's the church. Well, that was the first verse. I said, what church?
Which one?
Like if you throw somebody out of the Baptist church, he goes across the street to the Methodist church or the Lutheran church or the Presbyterian church or the even, I'm like, what church? So, and it brought me back to Monsignor Pedernicone, who put the question somewhere in me, what is truth and who has the authority to define it? And that was my journey. Because today, like the Pope says, relativism, I saw an interview you did with him when he was Cardinal Ratzinger. He said, relativism is the biggest problem today. Universalism. It's like imagine. That
oh,
song.
yeah.
It's like
John Lennon's song.
We could imagine it. And
imagine there's no religion.
my imagination isn't that big. Believe me, it can't. God's is. God could get it all together. He can.
I want to return to your journey, but while we're off on John Lennon for a second, you talk about him in this new book, about spending time. You spent a lot of time with him here in New York. He even carved your face out and put you on the cover of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Heart Club Band.
Yeah, he liked a few of my songs. He liked Ruby Baby. When I met him, I love a girl and Ruby name. Anyway, he liked that song.
Yep.
And he later on, when the Beatles put out Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, I noticed the cover of Ruby Baby in my head.
On one of the wax figures there.
I'd like to think it was because he liked Ruby Baby. Who knows? I don't know.
But it's only you and who else? Dylan?
Well, we're the only
You're the only Americans there.
Musicians on the cover. Right.
Isn't that something? Now you
and I tell everybody that's why that album sold so much.
Oh, you see, they were buying the Dion picture,
Sure.
of course. Let's talk for a moment about your take on John Lennon, which I found interesting in here. A lot of people gravitate toward him, even folks in the protest movement today. They love Imagine. It's become their anthem because it's anti-religious. Do you think he was anti-religious, or was he just so confused by the haze he was in?
Listen, I love John Lennon, and I have a lot of affection there, so it doesn't come out of anger. But but I think he was a seeker. See, it's very difficult. You get a guy like John Lennon or any rocker who's got angst and loneliness and issues, whatever you want to say, and he's an outsider. Kurt Cobain, you know, he's an outsider, and he becomes a big insider, a big, huge insider. As soon as you put the camera on, he's, you know, they know everything. Well, rock, I know everything. I'm a rock and roll. I could tell you, I know it.
Yeah. Mezza.
I think I know everything. But the song falls short. You know, you could get the 30 miners in Argentina and they're stuck in a hole. They're not going to be holding hands singing Imagine There's No Heaven. They're not going to do it. There's no hope. You might as well blow your brains out.
Yeah, it's a nihilistic song.
Come on, you know, so I could talk about that all day, you know, but it falls short. The song is a beautiful song, but lyrically it doesn't.
It's wanting, big time.
Yes.
My exclusive interview with Dion continues in a moment, and he'll discuss his induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame when the World Over Live continues. He also will talk about his return to faith. Stay right there. Welcome back to The World Over Live. We're talking with Dion DiMucci. Here's more of my exclusive interview with this rock and roll legend. So tell me about the road back to the Catholic faith. What happens? You go back to Our Lady of Mount Carmel, and what do?
Well, you know the saying, the truth will set you free. Well, the truth does set you free. I did... when I saw that the Catholic Church, you know, the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church, is exactly who they claim to be, is you know, when I saw the center of the church, and I think a lot of people don't see that. They see this, they see that, they see I don't know what they see, but they don't see, they're not in the middle, the center of the church looking out. They're outside looking in and yelling at it and beating it and cursing at it or seeing the dark stained glass windows. They're not inside of it seeing the beauty and the wonder and the mystery and the awe of, and the beauty of truth. It's mind-blowing. I love the church. Once you see it, because it was started from above. It was started by Christ himself. It started from, and the church is like a humble custodian, just walking around with this deposit of truth in its hand saying, well, this is it. And why don't you change it? Well, I don't know. Jesus gave me it, and I'm going to just carry it on. You either want it or you don't want it. You know, they're not a tyrant. They're just saying this is truth. They're protecting it, you know. So it's as simple as that for me, and I love it.
And EWTN was a little part of that. Marcus Grodi show, you were flipping one night?
I was. Well, you know, I was in these churches where there was a lot of volume and exuberance and great preaching. Wonderful.
And faithful people, good faithful people.
Wonderful people. Still my friends I'm talking about, and thank God for them. But I was flipping a channel, and I come across this channel, The Journey Home. And there was an Episcopal priest who had converted to Catholicism, John Haas, and he was talking about the issue of authority. He was saying there is no authority. The Catholic Church is the only religion on the planet that has an authority, period. What's he talking about? Well, he went on to say that, you know, there was no authority in his church. That's why there's a mess with all the situation and the issues and this. You can't resolve them because there's no living voice of authority. So it's all up for grabs. You could change anything you want. That deposit of truth becomes contaminated because nobody's protecting it. You could have a pope that's not even he could be a tyrant, or I don't know, he could be,
and we've had a few.
Yeah,
we've had it through a few in history.
He could be off his scent, but this has never changed. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the teaching's never been altered.
No, it's never changed. So that's what I love about it. You know?
I want to talk about your marriage, which is unbelievably successful given all of the ups and downs and the drugs and the fame. It's amazing that you've stayed with this same woman all these years. You're Susan. To what do you attribute that long marriage and the success of it?
I don't know. Susan runs deep. They say marry the woman that could get you to heaven or will get you to heaven. I heard that recently, but I did that by instinct. I don't know.
Providence.
By the grace of God, you know. But Susan is a lovely girl from Vermont, and just was always very, very earthy, and she's never changed. And very Catholic in her DNA, in her bones. You know, no matter what I was doing, she just was like a rock there, you know. And, she'd come to some of these evangelical churches with me, and the music would be just gorgeous. It'd be filling this church, and the Spirit of God is there, and wonderful, wonderful teaching. And she'd lean over to me and say, I wonder what this church is going to look like in 2,000 years. Something like that. And you start thinking about it, and it's a good question.
Was Susan Catholic? Was she born Catholic?
Well, yes, she was. Irish, I love the Irish. And there's something very profound in what she said, because the Catholic Church, you'd always hear, we got to get back to what the apostles were, get back to the original
early church.
The way they were back then, And the church, the Catholic Church, is that church. It just doesn't look like an acorn anymore. I don't look like a baby anymore. Right. You can't recognize me from my baby pictures, but I could assure you it's the same DNA, And there's a chunk of truth in that.
Yeah. Let's talk about 1989, a big year for you. You were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. What did that mean to you? Lou Reed did a great introduction, part of which is in this book.
Yeah. Lou, the street preacher.
I
love Lou Reed.
He attributes so much to you. He's
good guy, good people. Being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame was, all I could tell you, Raymond, is it felt good. It felt good. Your peers are recognizing you. And there's a lot of guys sitting at tables at the Waldorf that particular night that inspired me and keep me young. And I admire and love their music and fill me and keep me on the road,
Bruce Springsteen said this about you, and I want to get your reaction to it. He said, Dion is the true link between Sinatra and rock and roll. What do you make of that comment?
Well, you might have to turn off the camera, but
no, go ahead.
But I'll tell you. See, in the old days, in the show business years, guys would come out on stage and say, "Hey, everybody feeling good? Hope you're feeling good. Now we're going to take," and they'd be like, rock and rollers didn't do that. We came out and said, "We don't care how you feel. We're going to take you on a trip. Here we go." Baby, you want to come along, come along. You don't, who cares? Come on, baby, we got that. We didn't care. We were like, if you want to come, come. We don't care.
If you don't, it doesn't matter.
So there was a kind of like a paradigm.
A shift. But they were Columbia was trying to turn you into a new Sinatra.
Yeah,
early on, you're in the suit,
I was
and you're
battling
clean
it all my life, because people in the music business will know exactly what I'm talking about. I'd be at Columbia, they'd say, do this song, and then you could sing Ruby Baby. do one song for us, then you could sing Donna the Prima Donna.
Uh-huh.
Do one song for us, and we'll let you do the Wanderer. You know, so it was like I
Horse
would do an Al
trading.
Jolson song, and then I could do one of mine. So, but they started seeing that all the songs I was I was picking were hits. You know.
Yep. Why do you think he says that, though? Why do you think Springsteen says you're the link between Sinatra and rock and roll?
Well,
Then I'm going to give you my version.
okay.
Go ahead.
I'd like to, but I think because there was a period there that's like you're in no man's land.
Yeah.
You're like stepping out of a whole generation that's steeped in show business.
Right.
And you're stepping into the 60s,
Yep.
basically, that really...
And this new form of music. It's
Yeah.
rock and roll.
yeah,
It's a whole new form.
Yeah, it was very...
Yeah.
We were straddling the fence, you know.
Yeah.
But some of the guys weren't. You know, you get Little Richard and Chuck Berry.
yeah.
They were too out of space to even... But I was a good-looking Italian guy. They wanted to put me in the Copa. So I did... But
See, I think it's the street. You had both the street sensibility, some of the vulnerability of Sinatra, but you were in this rock and roll vernacular.
you know, when you look at Sinatra, he had a rock and roll attitude for sure.
Oh, no.
And you want to know who else did? Louis Prima.
Yep.
Louis Prima would be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame if he didn't sing Italian songs, and
You're
so
right.
would Sam Butura.
Yep.
You know.
Because they were also on the cutting edge of that. So many people forget Louis Prima and Sam and Keely Smith. They were really
It was a whole free abandon kind of music.
wild music.
Yeah. So to me it was rock and roll, but
A little before its time.
But they were, like Springsteen says, the link between show business, Sinatra, and...
In 2007, you released an album called The Son of Skip James, and you record a song there called The Thunderer. Tell me about The Thunderer. What inspired you to write that? I've read about it in many places. Many people have commented. I remember getting emails about it. You know, hey, you really should interview Dion. This song is fantastic. Tell me about it.
Well, St. Jerome was fantastic. He was a very interesting guy. I was in Rome with Mike Aquilina in 2005 or 2006, I forget. And I said to him, ignorance of Scripture is ignorance of Christ. St. Jerome. It's a St. Jerome quote, famous one. Used to be on the back of the wall, St. Martin at Tours. So he said to me, oh, the Thunderer. I said, the Thunderer? I never heard anything like that before. I knew the Wanderer, but...
No, not the Thunderer.
So he started telling me about St. Jerome, who's a very interesting guy, and probably very few Protestants know that the guy translated the Bible twice, once from Greek to Latin, and then he was a very bright guy and didn't get along with people too well. So he moved to Bethlehem, became friends with a rabbi, learned Hebrew, and then translated the Bible again from Hebrew to Latin. I said, what kind, and I'm talking about the mid-300s.
Right.
I said, what kind of guy is this? So I said, how could this guy be a saint? He used to like call people names.
Yeah. They literally had to put him in a cave to translate it.
It takes all kinds to get to heaven. I said, wow, you mean we got a chance?
Yeah.
You know, but this guy was so bright off the charts. He was born in what we now call Croatia, and his mother sent him to Rome when he was 12, you know, where the brightest of the bright got taught, you know, and they still do. But so I wrote a song called The Thunderer, and I put it on an album called The Son of Skip James. And you want to know? I heard a homily by the Pope, Benedict XVI, and he almost read the song.
Really?
He could have read the song. I said, the song is good. It holds up. It's good.
Can you do a little bit for us? Do you remember
Well,
it?
no.
It's tough.
It goes, God's angry man is crotchety scholar, with St. Jerome, the great name caller. Cared not a dime for rhyme or reason. Translated the Bible. I forget it.
No. It's complicated. The lyrics are complicated, but it's a great tune.
It's been a while.
Yeah. Tell me about the prison ministry you have. and your work with those who are struggling with addictions?
You know, I just like to, I love talking to men that are having a problem with addiction, or you know, that are having a problem with addiction, period. I just like sharing my experience, strength, and hope with them. You know, not preaching to them, just talking about that there's a way out, there is a solution. And all they have to do is ask in some small way. All you have to do is say yes. You know, sometimes people in addiction, you know, they have this attitude, they don't, you know, who are you to tell me what to do? Who are you? Get off my back. Don't tell me what, you know, they stay in eternal ignorance. They just, so you can't bust in on them. It's best to just talk about your own experiences. And sometimes you'll find people that are interested, and they'll say, well, they'll ask the question, how'd you get out of it? You know, what'd you do? What must I do? I'm glad you asked.
They're looking for answers, and you give it to them. I'm going to throw some names at you, and I just want your quick reaction. Sam Cooke.
Sam Cooke was a classy guy. His father was a preacher. He was a very lovely man.
And you knew him?
Yeah, he was a good guy. Protected me when I was on, well, I would say tours in the South where things got a little rough. He'd protect me.
Bobby Darin.
Bobby, I loved being around Bobby Darin.
He was a Bronx boy, too.
Yeah, I loved being around him. The guy had a personality that could keep you entertained for a lifetime.
Why do you think tortured souls make the greatest singers? You said, and I agree entirely, if something's not eating you, I'm not interested in your music.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I think.
What is that? I mean, but what is it? When you think of Elvis, Hank Williams, Judy Garland, Sinatra, these people had pretty rough lives.
You know, I love opinionated people. I really do. I could disagree with them all the way, but I just love it. I've always liked listening to music where I heard the person in the music. You know, there was a person there that I wanted to know more about. You know, whether it was Joan Baez, Bob Dylan, Springsteen, or Jeff Beck, even the way he plays guitar. You know, it just, I could hear it.
A clear angle. They got a clear point of view.
Yeah, I just, I love it.
Tell me about the next act for Dion. What are you working on now? I know you've got a new CD coming out.
Raymond, you know, I'm going to be 72 July 18th.
Don't use that excuse on us. Come on. I just heard you.
It's not an excuse. I wanted to tell you, no, truly, this is something I really wanted to, that amazes me. That I'm going to be 72, and I've never felt more relevant in my life. I feel much more relevant today than I did when I was, you know, making hit records. And that's an amazing thing. And that, I think, is God in my life. Without it, I don't think I'd be grateful. I don't think I'd have the insight to the music I look into or want to express, or the issues I want to express. It's an amazing thing. I think God has kept me, you know, it's like you trade all the doubts and fears and frustration and, you know, your worries for this wisdom and health and peace and security and power, true power and freedom. And, you know, one of the reasons for the book is I like defining things. And each chapter, whether it's about my father or my kids or Gino Lollobrigida or Martin Scorsese or my friends, the Belmonts, whoever I'm writing about, it kind of gives you a taste, it ends with kind of a taste of transcendence and a glimpse of salvation. Because I kind of conclude each chapter with something I've learned. And I love defining stuff like freedom. I used to think freedom was doing anything you want, especially if you didn't get caught. But that's, you know, regardless of the consequences to your wife, your family, God, your country, yourself. And that's that's license. Freedom is the ability to choose the good, God's best. And I was never free to do that. But so I have to work on it a day at a time here.
Well, what I love about the book is it's not only do we get glimpses of your life and really the inside story, but you see the steps of a life well lived and a life still on its way, but there's a lot of insights that you share along the way that I thought were interesting. And you've covered so much of our American history here, our musical history in your life. It's an amazing read, and all I have to say is no wonder we love you like we do. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you, Raymond.
It's been great. Dion the Wanderer Talks Truth, written with Mike Aquilina, from Servant Books, is available at bookstores everywhere. You can follow Dion by visiting his website, DionDiMucci.com. That's all the time we have. We want to thank Dion for the interview, and until next week, you can find updates and the occasional commentary by following me on Twitter or on Facebook. Go to my website, RaymondArroyo.com. On the left-hand side, you'll find the links that'll take you where you need to go. And if you want a fun summer read, why not pick up Of Thee I Zing, America's Cultural Decline, from Muffin Tops to Body Shots. It's a new work I collaborated with Laura Ingram to write. It's a lot of fun. It's at retailers everywhere. Until next week, we'll be scouting the world over for all that is seen and unseen. On behalf of the staff and crew of EWTN News, I'm Raymond Arroyo. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye now.